Everybody, it's Ellen Lewis from Crazy for You, and it's a Lunchtime Live Tuesday. So how's everybody doing? Thank you so much for joining me. My life has been crazy. Everything, I don't know, it just seems like everything is exploding. I'm all over the place and I feel super scattered. So if this is a little scattered, I apologize. You know, life happens. Colton, my youngest son, is still in the planning to go off to college not next month, at the end of September. And rather than get them there 2 weeks early for orientation, they're doing it all virtually. And so there's that. And my son, Johnny, who has been in commercial sales since he graduated from college, is looking for a new job. So I'm looking over his resume a million times and every cover letter. And oh my gosh, so it's a lot. So as I was finishing up the newsletter, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the newsletter yet today, but I didn't get to finish that up until dark 30 last night. And I was deep in the middle of it, and Johnny calls me. He's like, well, I was thinking about this, Mom. So I have a policy that I always take my kids' calls no matter what. So I was helping him, and then I guess I came back to the newsletter, and I had lost my train of thought, and I'm reading over it this morning, and I look at it, and one of the sections is just completely stopped in the middle of a sentence, which is very unlike me. So if you saw it and you were appalled, I'm sorry. I would love to say, oh, I promise it'll never happen again, but I can't make that promise because, you know, a life is not perfect. Hi, Emily. Oh, okay. So you guys who watched the Skicel Addy Rocket presentation with Heather McVicker last week, and those of you who entered the drawing, Emily Jackson, you won. So yay. Congratulations, Emily. I will have those needles for you soon. So that's good. Hi, Gwen. Hi, Peggy. Hi, Gail. It's so nice to see you. Oh, I miss you guys. I miss you so much. But anyway, I've been a little scattered and my knitting's been a little scattered, but I've been trying to focus a little bit, and swatching was on my mind because I've been working on this. Can I share this with you? This is a sweater that actually the swatch for this sweater was the one that I used in the newsletter today, the picture of it. And this was a swatch that I did for what was going to be the Fox Paws cardigan, which was a 4-day knit along last year, almost to the day last year. And we were going to do this, and this was my swatch for it. But you know, I'm really not a top-down girl. I'm not a top-down in the round, as you can see from my pile O stuff. And those of you who know me, I'm about the classic construction. So a couple of us who were going to do that sweater, me and I think Amy, we ripped it out about 5 inches in and converted it to a custom fit. So that's what this is. It's a custom fit that I started a year ago. And I had the back done and I guess half of one front. And I picked it up last week and I've just been going like gangbusters. And every time I think, oh, I'll do this other thing, I keep bringing myself back to this because it's going so fast. I think that's one of the things I like about classic construction. Do you guys like classic construction, meaning stuff that's worked in pieces and then seamed versus knit all in one piece? Go ahead and tell me in the comments which you prefer and why, because I'm always interested in hearing, or maybe you've never knit a sweater. So tell me what you like best and why. Anyway, I like the classic construction and I like the completion that you get. I mean, it's really easy to finish a front. It doesn't take that long. And I guess the point is that when you have a project and you actually stick with it for any period of time, you get stuff done, which is good. Let me see what folks are saying. Yay, Emily, congratulations. All right, classic construction. So anyway, the swatch was on my mind because when you do a custom fit, you do that swatch first, and it's not about like getting gauge. You decide the gauge that you like for your fabric, and then the pattern is written to those specifications, which I think is so wonderful. And it's been a shame since we haven't been able to be in the shop and do custom fit classes and measurements and all that stuff. And I really kind of missed that. But I'm trying to work on some creative ways to maybe bring those online. I have in the pipeline an online class that I'm developing for finishing. So if you're interested in that, let me know. That's going to be a very comprehensive class on all the aspects of taking your sweater from, pile O pieces like this to an actual garment that is beautiful and fits you perfectly. So that's a cool thing. I'm also working on a beginning, my first sweater class. So I think that will be kind of fun. None of you is looking to see who's on. None of you is a brand new sweater knitter. But anyway, I think that's going to be a good class because you find that the first sweater that you do, there's a lot of things you don't know. And I think there are so many things I wish I had known before I started my first sweater. And it took me 10 or more sweaters to learn those things. I still learn stuff. I learned stuff from good designers. And I think it's important whose designs you knit. I often say that the thing that I love about Ravelry is it's this great equalizer and everyone can be a designer. And the challenging thing about Ravelry is that everyone can be a designer. And it's hard sort of to parse through and see whose designs out there are well written and, carefully tested and all that stuff, because it makes a difference, especially if you're a beginning knitter or beginning sweater knitter, to embark on a pattern and realize that they didn't give you a gauge. So they only told you what yarn they used and what needles they used, and they don't give you a gauge. So you don't really know how you can recreate that if you knit very differently from the designer. Does that make sense? So I haven't had any specific technical questions to address this week, but if you have any thoughts on gauge or any questions about gauge, I would love to hear them, and I'll see if I can't answer those for you. But gauge is such a fundamental piece of sweater knitting that I feel like you can't really go over it too much. And there, even for more accomplished knitters, I think the understanding of how a gauge swatch works and how you should be measuring it for a sweater so that it doesn't end up too big or too small, I think can be sort of confusing. So if you have any thoughts like that, let me know. Let's see. All right. So sounds like everybody likes. So Eveline likes classic. Gail, yes, for sure. I think classic construction, you've got the seams in there and they give you the structure that you need. I think that's really important. And the set-in sleeve, I think it's like having the bones of your garment in place versus when they're all in one piece, there's nothing really kind of holding them in place. So let's see. I hate knitting in a tube. Yes, same, Gwen. Same, exactly. People don't realize that when you're knitting a sweater in the round, it's not actually in the round. You're working a spiral. So you don't come back to the same stitch. You come back to the next stitch up. So depending on the yarn that you're using, you actually can get a little bit of a bias. And I'm not here to badmouth in the round construction at all, because I know that Jenny May is a huge fan of it, and her sweaters always look wonderful. And there are a ton of designers who do really beautiful work. This is merely a preference. Okay. This is my particular bias. And if you're a sweater in the round girl, that is totally okay. I'm just sharing my bias. Let's see what else we got. All right. One seam sweater. Yeah, I do think that you have more, as Emily points out, you do have a lot more flexibility in shaping and things like that. What I have found is that a lot of knitters and designers will go to enormous lengths to create something very complicated top down that would be just so simple to do if you were working it bottom up. And I think that's always kind of interesting. Hi, Jenny. Thank you for being at the shop today. I love you. Ellen, yes. As an erratic knitter, constantly in a state of learning, I find project comments by knitters very helpful as to how well a pattern. Yeah, I think those comments are really important. And I think just sort of asking, Ellen, honestly, if you want to reach out to me anytime, if you see a pattern and you're like, hey, what do you think about this? I would be happy to look it over and tell you what I think, because I do think that it is a certain skill to be able, and it takes a range of experience with different designs to see how they're kind of put together and where they might be missing something, or not. I mean, and lots of them are great. So, I mean, that's where some of the more, the newer designers are coming along. And I don't want it to seem like I'm just old school. I don't do anything new. But I think there's something to be said for those. All right. What's Becky got on her mind? Hey, Becky. Nice to see you. Yeah. Okay. So Ginny makes a really great point too, in that classic construction means that it's so much easier to modify. I think you'll always hear with top down, it's so easy. You can try it on as you go. And certainly that's true. But I think from the planning standpoint, it's easy. So, that's why there's chocolate and vanilla. Everybody is different. Did anybody have any thoughts or questions about gauge? Gwen. Yeah, classic construction is kind of like a puzzle and putting that together. I do like the Coco Knits method, which I think is kind of cool. And she has actually designed a lot of stuff bottom up that's then seamed. And then she put her method is kind of working it from the top down. But I do think it is a lot more complicated to work it from the top down. And, to think all of that is simply because we don't want to make a seam. So who would be interested in a comprehensive finishing class online that you could own? Is that something that would be interesting to you guys? Let's see. So you like the newsletter about gauge, Becky? Thank you. I have so much stuff that I could say about gauge, but I do think it is it's especially helpful to think about your gauge swatches like dating. You're not gonna marry the guy after you met him in the bar and had a couple drinks with him or whatever, or even after 2 dates. I mean, you need a big enough swatch so that you can see whether your yarn is compatible with your pattern or whether your yarn is compatible with you. I mean, do you even like it? Sometimes you see something that looks really great and then it's a bear to knit, it's a bear to work with. And you're like, wow, I don't even want to knit a scarf with this, let alone an entire sweater. So that's kind of a fun thing. Yeah. Okay, good. Top down is good. Oh, yeah. Evelyn, that's true. It is, if you're not sure you have enough yarn, but I mean, you can still do that like for you can knit the body, because you're not going to make a short sweater for a body, right? You're going to have a certain length. I guess that would impact the sleeves. Let me share Eveline's comment here. Top down is good if you're not sure you have enough yarn. So do you mean like what sleeve length you would make with that? One thing that's kind of handy is with your the back of your sweater. If you're doing classic construction and you knit the back of your sweater, you can think of the back of your sweater as about a third of your total sweater. So if you take the back of your sweater and you've knit it, and then you can weigh that and you can see how much yarn in weight you've used, and then you can weigh what you have left. And if you have 2/3 in remaining yarn and 1/3 in your back, then you have enough to do probably 2 fronts and a decent set of sleeves. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb if you are doing classic construction and you're not sure about yardage amounts. Let's see. Could a mostly beginner benefit from such a finishing class? Yeah, okay. So I think the way that I'm structuring this class, Ellen, is, yeah, you could, because I think, and I talk about this in the class as I'm writing it, so much of good finishing happens in the knitting. There are so many little things that you can and should do as you're knitting that make your finishing process so much easier. Okay, lots of little tips and tricks. And the benefit of this class, I think, is that you would own it forever and ever. So it wouldn't be like, you wouldn't be able to go back to it. So it would cover things like a 3-needle bind off, all of the seams, weaving in ends, stitch to stitch seam, row to row seam, stitch to row seam, so that you could use that and have those videos and me explaining stuff kind of as you go along. So I think it would be a useful thing for you to have kind of as you grow as a knitter. I remember when I first started knitting, that was kind of the thing that stopped me in my tracks. It was how to get really good finishing done. And this was probably 30 years ago. Yeah. I was living in California. So that was 1987. So yeah, 30 some years ago. And I'd knit a lot of sweaters, but I wasn't really that happy with the way I'd put them together. And I remember taking a class at a yarn store and asking very specific questions about certain aspects, like joining at the shoulders. And it got really clear in my class that my instructor didn't actually know the answer to the question. And so I didn't know that for a long time. And that was my tendency to use 3-needle bind off at the shoulder, and then to do other kinds of, stitch to stitch seaming and try to figure it out. And to be honest, it wasn't until I opened the shop in 2004 and began teaching that I really, truly understood what was happening at that level. I'd done it and I'd sort of, fudged my way through it. But I don't think there's any better way to learn a thing than to teach it a few hundred dozen times. So that's what I want to capture. And I teach this class in the shop fairly regularly, and it's always a good class. And I want to be able to kind of capture everything that I teach in that class, plus other stuff that we don't have time to address in the class, so that it's kind of a master class that you can use regardless of where you are in your knitting and finishing journey. Let's have a look and see. Yes, so a mostly beginner, maybe save all the piece them. Yeah, you could do that. You could put your swatches together. I think also with your gauge swatches, if you're later on going to be picking up stitches along the edge, it's a great opportunity to use your gauge swatch and practice. Are you going to do 3 for 4? Are you going to do 2 for 3? What edging do you actually like on that? And practice your edging on your swatch before you've picked up all 357 million stitches around the neck. So again, as swatch is this little microcosm of trial and error that it allows you that margin of safety before you cast on all those stitches. You're doing it on a very small scale, which is nice. Sleeve length, yep. Okay, let me see what else. Yeah, you could definitely take the class even though you don't have something to finish yet. It would be a good class to kind of take before you start, because as I was saying to Ellen earlier, so much of good finishing starts in the knitting. Okay, good. Yeah. Oh, excellent. So Ginny is, she's the wizard. And if there's a problem with your knitting, a lot of people in the shop, they're like, oh, we want to see you, Ellen, because you're the expert. I'm like, okay, I know a lot, but when I can't figure something out, Ginny, could you help? So Ginny is the one. I call her my knitting technical genius. She is the whiz. She's the bomb. So if there's something tricky to be figured out, Ginny uses her swatch to help figure that out. So that's very cool. Hey, that would be a fun class, wouldn't it? How to fix mistakes. So yeah. All right. Well, I am trying to keep these to, we're probably already over our 15-minute limit, but let me just look real quick through all the things that didn't make it into my newsletter about swatching that I did want to share with you. Make a big enough swatch. It's tempting to just cast on enough stitches to give you 4 inches so that you can measure it real quickly, but you're going to get a better sense of your fabric and a more accurate measurement if you cast on a swatch that's 6 or 8 inches large. Another thing that I like to do with swatching is I like to give myself some garter stitch border at the bottom and the sides, because that helps the fabric lie flat when you're measuring it rather than curling up so much. If you are swatching not to see if you can get gauge, but just to see what kind of fabric you like, you don't have to do separate swatches. What you can do is you can do your garter stitches at the bottom and then along the edge. And then when you want to change needle size, on a purl row, just work a knit stitch, and that'll give you a nice break in between your fabric. And then you can change needles so you can see how the different needles look in your swatch. Another thing that we do in the shop is at the bottom of our swatch, we'll work a number of purl stitches that correspond to the needle size that we use, so that when we go back and we can immediately say, all right, so there's 6 little purl bumps right there. I can see that I used a size 6 needle for this. And then if it's 8 or whatever. So I think that's a fun little tip. I've seen knitters also recommend that you tie knots in the tail of the yarn for the number of knots corresponds to the size needle that you do, but that doesn't work if you're doing multiple swatches. So the purl stitches, another thing that you can do is do a yarn over knit 2 together so that you have a number of holes, like yarn over knit 2 together 6 times for 6 holes, but that actually will kind of mess up your measurement of gauge. So anyway, those are fun things. Wash and dry your swatch. I know that's a real pain in the neck to do, and nobody wants to have to wait. Again, if we're going with the dating thing, everybody wants the big wedding and they're anxious for their queen for a day moment, and they're not spending so much time thinking about the marriage. So that cast on and that big moment, you really have to have that backup, behind that, the swatch and the gauge, and make sure that it's going to fit you. Wash and dry swatch. Measure width and height at the same time. That's something that I talk about in the beginning knitting class, the beginning sweater class. My mother used to say, marry in haste, repent at leisure. And that's like swatching. You know, if you don't take the time to do it, then you're going to be sorry 500,000 stitches later. What else? I was going to use this as my title on the newsletter. Hey, tell me real quick. Do you hate the term newsletter for what I send out every week? I'm a learning junkie. I'm a marketing junkie. I watch and follow all of these people with all of their great ideas about what I should be doing to connect to my customers. And, you know, some of it makes sense and some of it doesn't. But one of the things they say is don't call your newsletter a newsletter. Call it something fun and creative and interesting. And I've been thinking about that. And obviously, if I could have thought of something fun and interesting to call it, I probably would have called it that. But if you have any fun and interesting ideas, or if you just like hearing it as the newsletter, just let me know, because I'm interested, because a lot of times you guys are so much smarter than I am. Anyway, I was going to use the title, the four-letter F word knitters hate, and it was going to be frog. Would that have made you click on the newsletter? Would you have opened it more readily with that, or would it have put you off? Tell me what you think about that. So as you can see, I am kind of all over the place today, but it's been fun. So thank you for bearing with me. Let me look real quick at the comments and see if there's any. No, it's fine. So newsletter is an okay title. All right. So we have a lot of things coming up that are fun. If you are not already part of the Crazy for You Yarns group on Facebook, please go and join that, because that's super fun. And we have a lot of really beautiful projects that people are sharing, and questions get answered. And Nishaya, who was one of my customers at the La Plata store a million years ago and had the audacity to move to Michigan, is excited about one of the tanks from the Tunics and Tank book. And she's doing a little knit along, and I'm going to be ordering yarn from Rowan for that. If there's a particular color that you want, please let me know. So it's a really cute tank, and that's a knit along for those of you who are interested in that format of, working together and being in community with other knitters on the same project. So that's happening in the Facebook group. Tomorrow, I have a fun new concept, I hope, for our Wednesday night Crazy for You Live. That's going to be fun. And then the following Wednesday, I have Tanis Gray joining us. So that's very exciting. She is, as you know, the author of many, many, many books and design. She's a pro in Fair Isle knitting, and she's been at the shop several times. I just love her. She's a wonderful person and a great knitter. And the Wednesday after that, I'm doing the chainette yarn construction yarn tasting. So there's a particular style of yarns that are not plied, but rather we call it a chainette construction, and they're a little different, and they have a lot going for them. But I think you have to kind of knit with them to really understand them and see how they work and how they look close up. So we have yarn tasting packs available for that. You can order those on the website. I'll put a link actually in the description when I finish here. But that's going to be a fun and interesting yarn tasting. And then in August, we have Shibui, and I'm excited about that. So we have their trunk show. But anyway, I've gone way over this. It's already half an hour, and I am delighted that you could be with me and that you have stayed with me this long. So thank you so much. I miss you guys around the table, and I always welcome your comments and your insights and your suggestions. And if there's anything that you need from me, you know where to reach me. I'm always available at Facebook Message. You can comment in the Facebook page or in the Facebook group. And you can always email me. You can just reply to the newsletter, or you can email me at ellen@crazyforyou.com. You can comment on the YouTube videos, whatever. You can DM me on Instagram. I read all of my emails and my messages personally, and I will get right back to you. So anyway, I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, be grateful, stay knitting, and create something beautiful. Talk to you soon. Hi, Marie. I just saw that you joined. Bye.